Welcome back to Worldbuilding Films, where we analyze the world settings and rules of films and TV shows to see if they work, if they don't, and if not, how they could be improved to enhance their stories. And today, we're talking about none other than the sci-fi action classic Minority Report, based on a short story by Philip K. Dick and directed by none other than Steven Spielberg, the Holy Emperor of cinema himself. And I mean it. He's my absolute favorite director and, frankly, personal idol of all time. And this is one of the many examples of why. A thrilling high-concept story about a crime unit that has the ability to actually predict murders in the future before they happen, and explores all its various ethical dilemmas. But of course, said dilemmas can only occur thanks to a very specific future that the film is set in. One that is surprisingly well thought out and ahead of its time, but that I think could be further expanded upon. So, that's what we're going to do here today as we review if the world building of this story works or not. To be clear, we will be reviewing the film mainly as it is, although we will also reference at times the original short story that it's based on. However, just so you know, I won't be considering the Minority Report TV show. Yes, that's a thing. Mainly because it has a lot of plot holes and contradictions, only lasted for one season, barely anyone knows this existed, and yeah, it just wasn't that good anyway. So, sorry, but I will be ignoring this one. Anyway, needless to say, we will be getting into some heavy spoilers here, so if you haven't seen this sci-fi classic, I highly recommend that you do first. And also guys, before we start, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on my Instagram page and join my Discord server, all linked below. Trust me, I predict that you'll have a good time. Alright, enough chit chat, let's get right to it. This is the world building review of Steven Spielberg's Minority Report. Nitpicks. So, I should start off by saying that I actually have to be careful here. The reason being that this film came out all the way back in 2002. And so, while this is set in the future, I should cut it some slack on some small details that just don't make sense anymore. For example, the fact that it uses these glass things as overly bulky flash drives. It's a product of its time and not a fault of the film, so I won't judge it for that. Plus, frankly, it ended up being one of the things that inspired the technology that we have nowadays, such as touchscreens, way before they were thought of. So, I won't nitpick things like that out of fairness. But there are a couple of things that I would like to slightly tweak just to get them out of the way. For example, while it is super cool that cars now are magnetically tied to roads and can even drive upwards, I would have all the roads curve a bit more slightly and not have them suddenly drop, because despite the fact that it does make a cool sudden moment, the sudden shift would realistically cause great discomfort to the passengers. Then there's the issue of the symbol of precrime in the tub in which the precogs are in. Cause if precrime is trying to keep their real identity and conditions a secret, as the film itself explains,
the precogs get over 8 million pieces of mail every year. Each precog has their own bedroom, television, and weight room. It really is wonderful to be a precog.
This is a dead giveaway. So, I think the reason precrime would still choose such an obvious symbol could be because they could have lied and told the public that the precogs were actually born due to radiation experiments gone wrong or whatever, as the original short story implied anyway, and just so happened to give them their gift. Hence why they don't come out into the public very much, and even then they should have actors in place to fake the roles to the public, and just lie and say that it's for the protection of everyone because they're radioactive or something. And thus the symbol could be spun as a reference to the radiation symbol, something that's just barely under everyone's noses without giving away the full truth. Oh, and not to mention that if the precogs are seen as religious figures,
I find it interesting that some people have begun to deify the precogs.
I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes the symbol of a new church too or something. And finally, precrime chose to use small wooden balls for the names of victims and perpetrators because they can scan the minute fine grain of the wood to ensure that it can't be falsified.
Each piece is unique, the shape and grain is unique. The shape and grain is impossible to forge.
Fine, but if that's the case, just like with the precogs, then they should never be touched for any reason, much less thrown around. Yeah, look, I know. Like I said, these are just nitpicks, and I wanted to get them out of the way, and we're done. Now on to the important stuff, such as adaptation. Okay, since this is a very complex story and it has a very specific origin, I think it's important that we lay the groundwork and explain the differences between the book and the film. Because the two really differ a lot here, and I think that if we want to adjust the world building of the film, it would be best to pick and choose the best parts of both versions. So, let's take a look at them individually. First off, the film. While it's set specifically in the year 2054, a whole series of events happened before then. Up until this point, crime was starting to become rampant across the country, and I would imagine also in the rest of the world, and at the same time, a new kind of drug called heroin was being developed and distributed everywhere. People were getting highly hooked on this, and it was starting to cause some unintended side effects. Children that were conceived and born from addict parents showed immediate signs of brain damage. It was so severe that most didn't survive beyond the age of 10 or 12. The few who did survive, however, started to experience strange things. Mostly nightmares of horrific events, which, people later found out, were actually visions of murders that were really about to happen in the future. When this was discovered, Dr. Hyman and Lamar Burgess decided to use these children to stop murders before they happened, with the two splitting apart due to their differing moral opinions on the minority reports themselves. But you should know that by now. After which, precrime was created, mostly as an experiment within a 200-mile radius of Washington, D.C., and if proved successful, they would go nationwide. It took them about 5 to 6 years to gain the reputation that they had, making the area free of murder, and causing these now grown-up special kids, redubbed as precogs, to gain this status as almost divine figures that were about to change the world. To the point that, as mentioned before, their true identities and lifestyles were kept a secret from the public eye, with everyone thinking that they're being well cared of and living up a lavish life. And instead, they're being constantly sedated in this secret tub to be used as mere tools for the rest of their lives, and considered as a necessary sacrifice for the greater good of the world.
It's better if you don't think of them as human.
From there, the events of the film unfold as we already saw. With John Anderton having lost his son mere months before precrime, Agatha managing to show Anderton the vision of Anne Lively, him being shown a murder he will commit for someone he doesn't even know, the discovery of the minority reports showing that precrime is actually fallible, all the way to the end where Lamar is discovered having cheated precrime into existence, being exposed, and causing the downfall of the whole system. All well and good, but that's just on the movie side. 'Cause, believe it or not, the original short story by Philip K. Dick has a lot more lore behind the scenes. While not specified, it's also set sometime in the distant future. And to be clear, since this was written in the 50s, Dick's version of the future, "Welcome to the world of tomorrow,"
Why do you always have to say it that way?
is just as wild and sci-fi-y as you might think, to the point that here, humanity has started colonizing other planets even. Woof! Big difference just in that right there. Although, keep in mind, being written in the 50s, this also has a lot of really outdated concepts. Like freaking payphones, and needing to put a quarter in just to be able to listen to a radio. So, yeah, look, it's a product of its time, and I'll just ignore little details like that. Anyway, in this timeline, at some point there has been something called the Anglo-Chinese War, which has caused plenty of destruction and most farmlands have been bombed or destroyed in some manner. This has caused plenty of radiation to leak on Earth, which led to some mutations in people, including, yes, the precogs, who started having visions and were the thing that created the precrime division, which in the book didn't exist for just 6 years, but something like 30. To the point that most people now, especially the youth, never even saw someone die in their whole life. Woof! Talk about a new status quo. Also, the precogs aren't just described as being regular humans who just happen to have visions, but straight up deformed creatures born out of this radiation and who have to be constantly hooked up to these machines. Hell, aside from even the fact that the names are different, the female precog, called Donna in this case, is said to be 45 and yet looks like a deformed 10-year-old. Oof. Yeah, I gotta point something out. Sorry, Mr. Spielberg.
Please forgive me for the heresy I'm about to say!
But at this point, maybe you could have afforded to give the actors playing the precogs, like, some kind of deformity due to their mutation instead of just leaving them as pretty actors, even if it's something small that you can hide under a hat.
Okay, that's it! I'm gonna give you such a thrashing! Jeez Louise, cool.
Anyway, small aesthetic and world building details aside, there is one very big element and detail that I have to point out. In the book, it turns out that humanity actually isn't using electricity anymore because appliances are described as being atronic appliances, and electricity is seen as something far gone and almost incredibly outdated that you find only on the most distant colonized planets. So, what? They have this new energy source called Atron? Do we get any explanation for that? Well, no. It just says that they have it, and that's it. No other explanation. Which is very frustrating, as a whole new kind of energy source that doesn't rely on electricity, and in fact makes it seem like an outdated thing, is a huge deal. No wonder then that these fools are conquering other planets. Ugh. Alright, well, since the book didn't clarify anything itself, I'm just gonna throw my own hat in the ring. Even if we don't know what this energy source technically is, I'm just going to assume that this is what caused this supposed Anglo-Chinese war, perhaps the radiation and fallout that came after, and that created this book's version of the precogs. So, minus other details aside, these are the main differences between the book and the film. And honestly, it's this last detail, this supposed Atron, that has me hooked, because it can help explain a whole bunch of details going forward with reviewing the world building of Minority Report. However, we'll get into more details with that later on in this series. For now we'll stop here, as next time we'll be discussing another aspect that mostly belongs to the film, and that is the sheer level of surveillance that this world has. So stay tuned, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Join my Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and I'll see you all at the next video. See you then, and as always, keep building worlds! And by the way, real quick, this video is sponsored by me. Because yes, my book, Grimm, has now been released in 3 languages, English, Italian, and German, and are all available on Amazon right now. It's a dark horror fantasy suspense story about a teenager who has the strange ability to see none other than the Grim Reaper. And one day he has to strike a terrible deal with the Reaper in order to save someone he loves. The reviews so far have been surprisingly good, and I thank each and every one of you who had a chance to read it. If you're also interested in giving it a shot, feel free to click the links down in the description below, or use the QR codes you see right here on the screen for each language. Give it a read, and feel free to leave a review, or let me know your thoughts on this channel's Discord server, also linked below. Thank you for listening, and see you at the next video.